Hi guys, welcome to Jamie the Kid's channel, Jamie the Kid 00, or Jimmy the Kid as his biggest fans call him. My name is Rufio. If you haven't seen me before, I'm a good friend of Jamie's, a fellow Yu-Gi tuber, and one of those people that kind of just follows him around, collecting all of the good stuff that he does and making it look like I'm good and competent at this game and this whole Yu-Gi tubing thing. But I'm here to share some content with you and hopefully enjoy this and want to see more. Big shout out to him for letting this happen. We do cross paths an awful lot. We actually live just a 2-minute walk away from each other, give or take, maybe if you power walk. So yeah, we have a lot of crossovers in our lives and we thought we'd make this one happen too. So for today's video, the intention here is to bring you a True King Dino deck profile that I used for the recent Remote Duel Invitational that I was invited to by Konami. It was a 16-man event. I won my first round. I lost my second, unfortunately, to Eldritch. The deck isn't perfect, and I will discuss about the things that I would have changed. I have to admit, some of the cards I was missing, and some of them probably should have just been better used, to be quite honest. But we'll talk about those as we go through. The idea here, again, is that this isn't perfect, but it might be a good chance for you to learn a little bit about how remote duels work, potentially the fact that there may be a thing going forward that people want to participate in, and of course, if you're just interested in a Dino deck profile, this might give you some ideas of where to start off. So we'll go ahead and get stuck into the profile. So we're going to start off with the monsters. We will start with the namesake of the deck, the True Kings. So we've got one copy of Lithosegum. It's at 1, so that pretty much tells you all you need to know. And 2 copies of Agnimazud the Vanisher. This is kind of a mixed reaction. I actually find that this is usually the least helpful out of the True Kings. It doesn't come up an awful lot, but it is nice to have the ability to keep resolving Dragonic Diagram. And of course, there are plenty of fire targets in the deck, which you'll see as we progress through. This is nice to be able to also get on board to go into VFD. This, however, is absolutely insane. It should not have been allowed back into the game. In fact, when I came back at the tail end of 2017, it had not long been banned. And I thought, you know what, I'll go and look through the limited and forbidden list. And this was one of the cards that was on there. I remember reading it and thinking, this card is absolutely bonkers and should be nowhere near the game. They'll never bring it off the list. And yet, here we are. It's even more insane in this deck because you're popping babies with it, so you're just gaining an absolute ton of advantage as you progress through your plays. It's also a massive body. It rips out parts of their extra deck. It's just absolutely wild all around. This is an absolutely, sort of must-play card. Some people like to play the water one. Is it Barastos or something like that, I think it's called? I quite liked this. Again, this didn't come up an awful lot. A lot of the time I was actually popping this in my play testing to actually get to this one. But it was okay. Again, just having the option to go into VFD, this allows you to do just that. So for the next part, we're going to start looking into the Dino engine itself. So we're going to start off with 2 copies of Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. This is an absolute win button. The really good thing with this deck is that if you're like me and you're one of these people who lacks folds in their brains at certain times and you get caught up in your own plays and you mess them up, you have this nice little safety net here called Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. It acts as an interrupt, so if you can get it on the board in the first turn, you're absolutely golden anyway. But if you're forced to go second, you've got a way to blitz through your opponent. The amount of times you just drop this on people and they just have no way to deal with it. Card's insane. Still definitely one of the best boss monsters in the game. Absolutely must have it in your deck. What I would say is that don't be tempted to go into a 3rd copy. I've done that before and it does become bricky at that stage. You actually very rarely want to see this in your hand other than when it's searched. So yeah, just generally speaking, you don't want it in your hand. 2 is absolutely perfect. 1 I think is too little. If your opponent does find a way to out it, they're usually going to struggle to deal with the second one in terms of their resource translation. Next up, we have a single copy of Overtex Quatless and a single copy of Pancratops. This was debatable as to whether I wanted it in the main deck or whether I wanted it sided. I ended up opting for it to go in the main because I was actually missing a couple of the cards that I wanted, which we'll discuss in a moment. So it was one that went in and actually it kind of worked out okay. Again, it's just one of those cards. It's really, really nice. If you're forced to go second, it's a good option to have in there. It isn't Earth, so it's something that you can pop off Litho if it's in your hand and it's dead. It's a pill target. Like, it does so many different things. And even going first, like if you can pill and get it on board, because maybe you've seen some of the other options to go into, it just gives you another form of interrupt for the next turn. And then there's Coatless, which searches the pill. It's worth noting that a lot of people have dropped this previously, but I actually think it's kind of important to run. Now we're going to run 2 copies of Pill these days, and this gives you a way to go into it. The other thing as well is, of course, that this gives you another negate on board, and this is the way we are playing with dinos now. We're not playing this go second, blow through everything. Although this deck can do that, we're primarily focusing on going first and setting up so our opponent can't play through our board, and this just helps us get over the line. Next, we have 3 copies of Soul Eating Oviraptor, the best normal summon in this deck, absolutely no doubt about it. However, actually, with the modern way you play this deck, a lot of the time you end up special summoning this off your babies and just going about crazy combo plays. And there are plenty of videos out there. I'll actually have one up of my own in different ways that you can play dinos, but there are an absolute ton out there already, so if you do want to go check those out, certainly go take a look. Oviraptor, just so important. If they don't stop this, you're normally in a really good place. Unfortunately, this normally gets all the hand traps thrown at it, but it's absolutely insane. The fact that it can just allow you to keep resolving babies, the fact that if you're playing Lost World, you can pop their tokens and gain advantage for yourself. This card does so much. If this ever gets hit, I honestly think the deck is dead. It's a must play at 3 in my opinion. We have 3 copies of Baby Cerosaurus. This absolutely has to be played at 3. It's insane. It's not once per turn. You keep resolving it. You keep popping them with a variety of things. You can pop them with your Overs. You can pop them with Diagram. You can pop them with your Animadorned Archosaur so that you can just gain pluses and pluses. You can pop it with your True Kings. It's just absolutely bonkers. I would recommend playing 1 copy of Petite Pteranodon as well. Unfortunately, I didn't have mine available and it didn't turn up in the post in time. I had to turn around in very short notice. I would recommend, though, like I say, 1 copy of Petite to go with this. But 3 Baby Cerosaurus is mandatory in my opinion. We have 2 copies of Miscellaneousaurus. Again, this is incorrect before anyone squawks at me. I got absolutely called out about this on stream. This is incorrect. I just didn't happen to have the 3rd copy. I could have sworn I had it. I was looking over it. I looked through all my bulk. It was nowhere to be found. 3 is correct. 2 is absolutely not. You must play 3 copies of this card. It's absolutely insane. This is one of your big combo starting points. It's such a massive, important card. It acts as a hand trap, a starter card, all kinds of good stuff. Just absolutely wild. This card at 3 is just insane for this deck, and it's mandatory at 3 in my opinion. We've got 2 more one-offs to show you. So we've got 1 copy of Giant Rex and 1 copy of Animadorned Archosaur. So this is obviously an extender. It can be really bricky, and it is one of those cards I kind of don't want to play, but at the same time, you kind of need it. The advantage of this is the fact that it does have Earth on it, so it can be popped off your True King, which sets up an awful lot of your plays. Of course, when it's banished, it helps you set up your rank 4 plays, particularly if you get it off Pill. It's very free at that stage. It becomes a big body. It's another dino. There's lots and lots to praise about this. And then following on from that, we have Animadorned Archosaur, which of course sets up all your plays. It pops cards, particularly babies usually. It does have other search options, but usually you're going to go in for Pill, and it is when it is normal or special summoned that you gain its effect. It's a really good card, incredibly important. I wouldn't recommend running the deck without this. I wouldn't recommend 3 copies. Between 1 and 2 is absolutely fine. I found that 1 worked particularly well for me. Next, in a kind of weird roundabout way, we are going to go on to our tuners, of which there are plenty in this deck. Of course, these double up in utility as happening to be hand traps. The other thing about this is it's fire, so it helps you resolve Agnimazud, so you can get it onto the field. Ash Blossom, the most generic and most beneficial hand trap in the game, in my opinion, probably aside from Infinite Impermanence, but Ash just hits every single deck. Really important to play some kind of playback if you are forced to go second, and like I say, it does have some additional utility. Of course, worst case scenario, it can become a normal summon that leads to Hulka Fibrax plays. So we're going to run through some of our tuners now. I would like to apologise if you do hear any crazy noises in the background. I have a pet pug, and he kind of has, like, living sleep apnea. Like, he's not asleep, but he just makes these kind of weird grunty noises. So if you do hear any of that stuff going on, it's him. But we'll go on. I digress. So Jurak Aeolo, this is really important in the deck now. This is something that a lot of people were cutting at one point. Again, it allows you to resolve your True Kings. It allows you to get it off Miscellaneousaurus and get you into Hulka Fibrax plays. It's just a really important card in the modern game, particularly in Master Rule 5, and particularly with the lines of synchro plays that people are going down. An absolutely must include card in my opinion. We also have Jet Synchron, again, more and more utility. Of course, we already know how insane this is. It's probably going to get hit on the list to some degree. This card is absolutely bonkers. It's fire, it's a tuner, it's so free. It's just incredible. If you haven't got this in your deck, you're missing out for sure. Next up, we have Tenyu Spirit Adhara. Again, I just needed cards to flesh out. Like I say, there was one or two I was missing. The fact that this was an Earth and a Tuner was a really big sell to me. And the fact that it's also a free special summon if you see it in your opening hand. It's also a 1-for-1 target, so it gives you another way to play. It's just a really nice inclusion and something that people should maybe consider having in here. I would potentially cut this, though, for a Misk or another one of the babies, personally. We have Mecha Phantom Beast O-Line. There's so much to be said about this card. Again, it's just insane. This and Jet Synchron are just absolutely wild. Don't deserve to be anywhere near the game. Why they didn't hit this earlier, absolutely beyond me. It's a tuner. It's so free to get out. It gets you tokens. It's just absolutely wild all around. It does set up a huge amount of your plays. Next up, we have Dragon Buster Destruction Sword. So a lot of the time, actually, you'll find that if your hand is kind of suboptimal, and that is the risk, there are some cards in here that really are kind of bricks. If you're doing your combos, a lot of the time you can end on just like a Dolk or a Lagia and equip this to it with Union Carrier, and you're normally in a really good position from there. This, a lot of the time, will just kill off the plays, and if you do see it in your opening hand as a worst case scenario, it is a tuner, it's a level 1, so you can link Karibo to get rid of it and that kind of thing. So it does give you some other options. This is a really filthy card, and to be honest with you, to not take advantage of it when it's so free to set up is just absolute madness. If this doesn't get banned, I'll be amazed. And our last monster in the main deck, we have Caligo Claw Crow. This is a big shout out to Marty, by the way, if you're watching. This was his idea, actually, something that he was running in his deck. I tried it out. I thought it was a little bit of a meme, but actually it was kind of okay. Sometimes it really comes up quite nicely as being just an additional extender. It is also a target to search off an Immadorned Archosaur if you find yourself in a weird kind of convoluted position where you need to get plays going. This is just an extender that you can get into your hand. Being able to just pop extra cards is so more beneficial, that allowing you to resolve those effects and maybe only search this is absolutely fine. So that is it for the main deck monsters. We now move on to our spell lineup. It's pretty compact. There's nothing too crazy going on here. We've got triple copies of Fossil Dig. This is mandatory. It's reinforcement to the army for the deck. It can search level 6 or lower, so it does have some added benefit there. It doesn't really apply too much in this scenario, but there is something to think about. I definitely need to bump up my rarities on these. Really important card in the deck. It gives you so many more different ways to get into, see Miscellaneousaurus in your hand, or get into Oviraptor and that kind of thing. Just really important. A must play at 3 in my opinion. We have 2 copies of Double Evolution Pill. It is worth noting that this can be a super brick, which is exactly why I'm not running it at 3 copies. There is some temptation sometimes because you think, well, you know, if I see it in my opening hand, maybe I can bait trying to search with it. Don't bother. Like, it'll break you it does way more harm than good if you've got it in your opening hand, so you really don't want to see it if you can avoid it. But being able to search it is incredibly free, and the fact that actually the real benefit is from being able to pop other stuff. Usually Baby Cerosaurus or Petit Pteranodon if you're playing it, which you should be. Yeah, just being able to pop stuff, being able to banish bits and bobs, especially stuff like Giant Rex. It just gives you loads of pluses being able to try and get to this card and then to resolve this card. If the stars align, and they often do with this deck, it's just absolutely insane. 2 copies is perfect. I think 1 is too little and 3 is definitely too much. We have 2 copies of Call by the Grave. So the reasoning with this was I figured I'd probably play a lot of Eldritch and that kind of thing, and that potentially this deck really loses quite hard if you get hand trapped quite significantly. That did happen in one of my games. If you have seen it, you'll see I was playing against Eldritch. I was forced to go second. I didn't have this in hand, and then I got absolutely rinsed by Effect Veiler. Had I had this in hand, I potentially could have played through his entire board. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be. Call by the Grave is really strong at the moment. It deals with so many problematic cards, including hand traps, including Eldritch, you know, all of that kind of good stuff that's going around in the format at the moment. This tends to deal with it. I would have liked to have played 3. I really just didn't have the room for the 3rd one, to be quite honest with you. But yeah, it's quite nice when it comes up. Unfortunately, it didn't come up as much as I would like, but I think in theory, it's pretty good. We have 1 copy of Dragonic Diagram. It is at 1. That is the reason we have 1 copy. Of course, if it was at more, then we would absolutely be running more. This card's absolutely insane. Opening this with a baby is just the full combo on its own. If it resolves, if you don't win, you're just straight bad at this game. This is absolutely wild. For a good reason this is at 1. It also happens to hurt True Draco, which doesn't harm my opinion on the fact that they limited this in any way, shape or form. But again, just keeps resolving your babies, keeps you going for pluses for days, helps you get to Litho, helps you pop babies. It just does absolutely everything you could possibly want. We then have 2 copies of Lost World. The debate was whether I should play 3 or not, but actually this doesn't do as much as I kind of hoped. I know that this sounds really strange. Of course, giving your opponent a token that sort of blocks off them from being able to do an awful lot to your board whilst you're trying to play does come up. Reducing the attacks and stuff does come up. But I felt like it was something that I wanted to be able to search. I didn't want to see it in my opening hand. So much like everything else, it was something that I wanted to get off terraforming, or maybe draw into later on, but not necessarily to open, because it restricts you, and you need to be able to combo, and in this format, if you don't, you basically just lose. We are on to the power 1 of spells now. We have 1 copy of terraforming. We have 3 targets for this. You could play set rotation as well if you want to kind of mess with your opponent, maybe include a Mystic Mind. Those are optional, and things that I have tried out before. I just opted not to play them in the end. Terraforming is really, really strong as a one-of, because that's all available. If I could play more, I would. We have Foolish Burial, again, because a lot of the time just getting Miscellaneous Aurus into Grave sets up the rest of your players, being able to banish it to get out your Animadorn, and then your Animadorn pops something in hand, usually a baby, and then you just start going through your entire combo. A crazy starter card. This is at 1 for a reason. Speaking of one-ofs, we have 1 for 1. This was something that I'd seen omitted from actually quite a few lists. The one I took the most inspiration from, and I named him earlier, I won't name drop him again. He wasn't playing this, and I actually couldn't quite understand why. There's so many good targets in here, and in fact I've upped the amount of those that you can get to. Just being able to see any tuner does start your Halka Fibrax plays, and most of your tuners are level 1. Of course, they're all absolutely insane and busted. You can go into a Nimodorn to get your pill off quite early and start popping babies. There's just an awful lot of utility. Again, it's just one of those absolutely insane broken cards, and sending a card from the hand as a way to get into things is just, it's so free, it's unreal. And lastly, for the main deck, we have 1 copy of Upstart Goblin, because playing 39 cards is better than playing 40. For the next part, we're going to look through the extra deck. It is worth noting again that there's some changes here I would absolutely recommend making. We should definitely be taking more advantage of Halka Fibrax and what it offers in today's game. Quite honestly with you, having played a little bit more in recent weeks, I've noticed that if you don't stop Halka Fibrax from resolving, you're normally in a really dangerous place. It's worth noting I didn't take full advantage of that in the extra deck, so I would definitely recommend taking a look at some other options. But we start off with 1 copy of Linkuriboh. Like I say, there's an awful lot of level 1s. It's just a good way to protect your board if you find yourself in a tough situation. It's free fodder, it helps set up your pill and that kind of thing. Just an all-around good generic card to have available to you. We have a single copy of IP Masquerena, being able to interrupt your opponent. Don't do what I did and just make this in turn 1 with nothing to back it up. Absolutely stupid. Somehow I still won by some sort of Hail Mary situation I got through. But IP Masquerena is just an absolutely wonderful card. You already know how strong and powerful this is. Something that I believe every extra deck should have access to. We have a single copy of Union Carrier. Again, this just sets up so many crazy, oppressive situations, equipping that Buster Whelp from the deck, or Buster Dragon, whatever they call it. I always get the two mixed up by their name. But being able to equip it to absolutely anything pretty much is just wild. And this does set up an awful lot of plays. I think that this card's only going to increase in power over time. We are going to see more and more of that as time moves on. Really, really important, really easy to summon, sets up crazy boards. That's the short and sweet of it. We have a single copy of Crystron Halka Fibrax. Some are actually playing 2 or 3 copies of this, where they want to keep resolving it and summon it and all that kind of stuff. I think 1 is absolutely fine in here. You could potentially go up to 2. I definitely didn't make full advantage of this in the way I would like to. If you do learn all your combos and you get all the correct synchros and stuff in place, this is just absolutely insane. It's a free win if they don't stop it. This is a must-own card, in my opinion. It is likely to get hit at some point soon on the ban list. Probably not this one, maybe the next one after that, but it is something that you should definitely have in your repertoire for as long as it's available to us. We have 2 Nightmare cards here. They are here to stay. 2 really important utility cards. Nightmare Phoenix for popping back row, of course, being able to get bodies off board. It does also double up that it's a fire, so you can resolve your True Kings. And Nightmare Unicorn primarily being used with IP Masquerena. But again, it's something that you can just equip your Buster to. You can spin a card on their side of the field. It just does so much. And of course, if you get these co-linked, you're going to start getting extra draws on your turn. And then we round off with 2 Link 4s. This is it for our Link monsters. We have Appaloosa and Borrelsaur. This seems crazy considering we have so many big damage monsters in the deck. But my theory with this was if I found myself in a situation where I could get really to nothing else, if it was really that desperate, I could get to this, get to a Union Carrier and equip this with a Buster. They're not going to be able to just kill this. They're not going to be able to pop it with anything because they're probably not. And we have the Buster so that they can't go into the extra deck. Of course, it is also a win button in convoluted scenarios. Sometimes just any 4 Link monsters, or sorry, 4 materials, and you can just win the game outright. I really was reluctant to take this out. There was some consideration for maybe Borreload in a weird convoluted scenario, but I think that this merits its place in the deck. Following that, we have Appaloosa, which is just absolutely insane. You already know by now. This is a lot of the time to stop Nibiru if you can get a huge amount of extenders on board. It has multiple negates, which is just absolutely insane. It's a big body. It's definitely one of the best extra deck monsters ever printed, and if you have access to it, you should absolutely be running it. We have our Evolzar Twins of Destruction. I think these a little bit like the Dino equivalent of Armageddon Knight and Greffa. They always go hand in hand, these 2 together. Dolka and Lagia. These are so important, getting made all the time on turn 1. Usually we're going to make this to stop Nibiru, or if we think our opponent just doesn't play it, sometimes we can set this up if we've got other negates on board. Both have their relative, important situations and where they come up. And of course, again, they double up as utility, both being fire, both being dragon. They can be equipped with the Buster. So it just gives you a load of options, and of course they're made with Dino, so what more could you possibly want? We have a single copy of Abyss Dweller, one of the best rank 4s ever printed. There's no question of that. It's really hard to try and make this with any kind of water stuff because we don't actually have the right targets for it, but the fact that it just shuts off the grave is incredibly important, particularly in the modern game, and increasingly so. This is only going to ever get more powerful in my opinion, and I think that you absolutely must include it if you can make rank 4s in your deck. We have a single copy of True King of All Calamities. We can make it and it just wins games. There's not much more to be said about it. This card needs to be banned, but as long as it's available, we will continue to make use of it. And we move on to our synchros. I'll do all 3 of these at once because it's probably going to save us a little bit of time, and I do like to waffle. We've got a copy of Coral Dragon. This is incorrect. It shouldn't be in here. This should be a better synchro, but the logic was in missing some other options. It is worth noting, again, that we've been out of the game for a little bit of time now, so some of those options have disappeared by the wayside, but having a target for Hulk Fibrax if it stays on the field was nice. It was something I could make. It can pop cards, it can draw cards. I just thought it was an okay option to go into. We also have Ravenous Croco Dragon. It's just absolutely insane, just drawing cards and all that kind of good stuff. And Trish, you already know how good this card is, looping your opponent for cards. And if you do somehow get to both of these, which is possible if you have the correct extra deck, you can then go ahead and just overlay them for your True King of All Calamities. And then we're going to finish up the deck profile with a little bit more talk and hopefully not too much longer. We have 2 Kaijus in our side deck. Dogoran because it's Dino. It also happens to be Fire. We have Humongous because it's Earth. It's also small, so it can get obliterated nice and easy. Just out-problematic cards. Unfortunately, the rounds that I played in were only best of 1. I didn't make it to the best of 3 rounds in this particular instance. But in theory, they're good cards to have available to you. We have 3 copies of DD Crow. I felt like that this could be absolutely important and clutching against decks like Eldritch, where they've got so many cards that can go off in the grave. This is just really good. And of course, once the new rulings and stuff are all in place, particularly like I have in North America, which we don't see here in Europe at the moment, these will become even more valuable over time. We have a triple copy of Dark Ruler No More. I wasn't sure whether to go with this or to go with Nibiru or to go with both. I was considering maining Nibiru. It is something you should consider in this format because if you lose the dice roll, you normally lose. The downside to this card is it says you can't win. So if you play it, you can't win that turn, but you can put your opponent in a position where they definitely can't claw it back. A really important card in my opinion. Especially important in formats like we've got at the moment where people just combo off and go crazy. This will help get you over the line. We have triple copies of Cosmic Cyclone. The idea here is that we want to be banished and stuff, primarily with the Eldritch match in mind. I could use Twin Twisters and pop more, but then they're in grave and they can just resolve them and keep going about their place. This will help to get rid of them, and for 1,000 life points, absolutely worth having. We have a single copy of Call by the Grave because I wanted to make up the playset, so it's something that I could side in. I wasn't really sure what else to put in here. There potentially are better options. This would probably be Pancratops if I had the correct main deck as I wanted to have it. And then lastly, for our side deck, we have triple copies of Evenly Matched. Much like Cosmic Cyclone, the idea here is I want to take resources and banish them completely from play. I don't want to send stuff to the grave. I could Lightning Storm them, and then they've got a ton of resources for the next turn. Or I can play this, blow out their entire board, and they will not recover. You can also use it going first if you're desperate, and set it and pass and hope for the best. So that is it for the deck profile, guys. Thank you very much for checking in. If this is your first time encountering me, my name is Rufio. Hopefully you'll see a link down in the description. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, Jamie. Go ahead and go check out my channel. I do plenty of crossover content with Jamie. Planning to do plenty more. And yeah, all of the good stuff. We do a ton of different bits on there, including crash courses, deck profiles, live matches, and discussion content. Thank you very much again for checking in, guys. If you haven't already, you should definitely hit subscribe on this channel too. And I will see you in the next one.